We didn't win a national championship because you weren't worthy to be a champion.
Just like in this press conference, he is real, authentic, and unfiltered.
How lazy are you?
Everybody really hated me, and it was tough to deal with.
63-60, but then a turnover and 2 missed shots.
What game are you watching today, Chris? Honestly, what game are you watching?
It's a poor fit for Russell Westbrook. I don't know how many times we can say that.
The amazing JJ Redick is here, everybody.
With 15 seasons in the league and over 800 episodes of his podcast, The Old Man and the Three, JJ Redick has cemented his legacy as a pioneer in the world of new media.
The leader of the new media is JJ Redick, just so y'all know. It's not.
But his journey wasn't always easy. In a world of constant hot takes, clickbait titles, and an increasing distrust in traditional media, JJ had to find a way to stand out. From the highs of winning on the court to the struggles of figuring out what to do after his playing days were over, he found success in the most unexpected of places. This is the story of JJ Redick, the fans' media maverick. 2006. Orlando. JJ Redick takes us on a behind-the-scenes journey of a day in his life. From his early days, JJ was ahead of the curve, long before the rise of day-in-the-life TikToks. Fast forward 12 years, and JJ landed in the heart of Hollywood, joining the LA Clippers. This move marked a pivotal moment in his career, not just on the court, but also in the media space.
You're also the only active NBA player to have your own podcast.
This was his proper introduction to the world of podcasting.
Hey, it's JJ Redick.
For three!
I'm very excited about this. My very own podcast, The Vertical Podcast with JJ Redick.
Quickly gained a following, taking the lessons he learned from basketball, such as the art of repetition, and applying it to his new creative endeavor. However, juggling his playing career, family, and podcasting led to burnout, ultimately leading to the hiatus of the show.
I had enough time to fully invest in the podcast, and what originally was going to be a month break turned into the rest of the season.
The next summer, JJ met Tommy Alter, a well-known producer whose credits include The Shop on HBO and Desus and Mero. Alter suggested JJ host a podcast for The Ringer.
Was last year difficult for you?
Yeah.
Not just getting traded, but the whole the summer, preseason?
Yes, yeah. Hell yeah, it was difficult.
Known for his candid and critical commentary on the industry, he quickly expanded his reach beyond the basketball world, interviewing guests like Hassan Minhaj and Malcolm Gladwell. But like every creator on YouTube, JJ wanted to own his own IP.
Well, if I don't have control of that, like, what good is it, you know? And so it really just became bottom line, like, are you gonna let me own it? And he said no, and I said, okay, no hard feelings, that's fine, we're moving on.
I mean, the name of the podcast was the JJ Redick Pod. Redick's decision to quit the show with The Ringer is clear evidence of him distancing from traditional media. By the turn of the century, JJ had established himself as a prominent figure in the NBA media industry. But to suggest everything went smooth sailing would be remarkably dishonest.
I think I've had a loss of joy. I look at our team and how we play, and it's just, there's no joy in it.
Sort of dark existential moment where I was like, what is the point of all this?
The NBA will teach you that things can change very quickly.
We've, like as a family, sacrificed a lot, and so it's almost like it's time for him to kind of take one for the team, and it might not be like a championship.
After years of youth leagues, AAU, high school basketball, 4 years at Duke, and 15 years in the NBA, I'm retiring from the game that I love so much.
The transition from retirement to a new life is never easy.
Part of every athlete's life is very difficult when they retire. It is like a death.
Yes.
Having just gone through it over the last year.
However, he seamlessly transitioned into a full-time content creator with his podcast, The Old Man and the Three. And with newfound time, he doubled down as a TV analyst and full-time creator, bringing on better guests, going against the norm of traditional media, going back and forth with Stephen A. on First Take, and having nuanced discussions. The reason he's highly respected by fans is because of his honesty, his truthfulness, and his willingness to speak his mind.
You have the ability to go up against traditional, conventional journalists and give a perspective that's on their level.
No disrespect to traditional media, but sometimes it lacks context, which JJ provides so well, not only because of the format of the podcast, but because of his playing experience, knowledge of the game, and comfortability he has with guests. His guests mostly consisting of former players, current players, the occasional comedian, and the people he wants to talk to. Side note, JJ and Tommy, if you're watching this, I would love to come on your podcast and talk about basketball and give a fresh new perspective as a new fan. As a new fan of basketball, I've started to consume more and more content of the NBA. So I don't necessarily know the truth of the game. But even as a casual fan, I know when I'm being baited. I've consumed enough Formula One content to understand when I'm being sold to versus when I'm being told to. The one thing that makes the podcast so great is JJ's and Tommy's ability to listen to their guests. You can see it on the show when JJ will put his mic down to let the guest speak, allowing them to clearly articulate their thoughts. Because there's a difference between listening and hearing. And as a guest, that gives people a level of comfortability that they normally wouldn't have if it was for studios, lights, and cameras. Like any other podcast, it feels like a conversation amongst friends. You can even see it through the production setup, usually filmed in a hotel room, player room, kitchen, or a couch, letting the conversation and guest be the center stage instead of Hollywood production. As a new fan, this is key, because I can leave the podcast with an understanding and an appreciation for how the game is played, despite not stepping foot courtside. And that's why I'm spending so much time going from a fan to a fanatic. I will never be an NBA player, but my admiration since watching the podcast has only gone up. And that's why I've set myself the challenge of going from nosebleed seats to courtside seats. It does feel like I'm earning my stripes every time I get closer to the game. And JJ's podcast digitally has allowed me to do that. There's a clear trend now in his early years of the podcast finding its footing. But if there's one thing we know about JJ, it is.
We lose on Saturday, I'm in the gym Monday. Like that, I loved the process. I loved everything that went into it.
In many ways, JJ has replicated what the likes of Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson did for the game, but digitally. And because of his dedication off-court, athlete-driven media has only risen with the likes of Draymond, CJ McCollum, Pat Beverly, and a host of many others having their own podcasts. And he has achieved a stronger connection with fans that most traditional outlets have struggled to do, therefore continuing to become a true pioneer in the NBA media space. And remember, never bring up Dolph Schayes.
Dolph Schayes first. So I could beat his ass and be on the top 75 list.